Hi friends, Tony DeWitt here, Missouri appellate attorney and a guy who likes to make the law make sense on YouTube. Here's what we're discussing today. Well, the jury has reached their verdict and it's guilty on all 4 counts. I have just a few observations and then I would like to, I'd really like to have people tell me what they think about the verdict, and maybe we'll do another comment video on that. Here's the things that I noticed about the verdict. First of all, looking at Shannon Smith's face when that jury came back after only 8 hours of deliberation, I think she knew that at that point there was a conviction. She probably hoped only for one conviction, but that would have made no sense. If she was guilty of one, she would have been guilty of all 4, and that was always the case. So certainly as it respects the involuntary manslaughter, then they found her guilty. And there's certainly evidence that supports that. There's certainly, under the theory that the state advanced, I think you can make the argument that they met their burden of proof. And obviously the jury felt like they had met their burden of proof. I think it was probably a pretty tough case, and I do think the jury really went through the evidence. But here's the one thing I noticed. It seemed to me that there were, maybe by 1 or 2, there were more women on this jury than there were men. Now, it has been my experience that women tend to judge women much more harshly than men judge women. And I don't know that that's necessarily true, and I'm not sure that's exactly what went on here, but I do think that in most respects, the way the foreperson announced the verdict, she was very sure of herself, she was clear, she was forthright, she just pumped that verdict out. And she wanted to let her know, yeah, you're guilty of manslaughter. And I thought that if there was one thought that Shannon had after that, it was probably like, boy, I really wish I'd exercised a peremptory challenge on that gal. Because when you have a strong foreperson, when you have somebody who's the foreperson of the jury, and they are strong, they can often negate people who have doubts. And they can argue with them, and because they're the foreperson and perceived to be in charge, even though nobody is in charge of anybody in a jury. The foreperson is just in charge of the process, right? Because you have a strong foreperson, it generally means that you're going to have whatever verdict that foreperson really wants to get. And it may have taken her a long time to get there with this jury, but indeed, every one of those jurors polled said, yeah, that was their verdict. And I think in this particular case, the evidence of the affair may have played a bigger role than I first expected it to. You know, one of the problems with not having been present during voir dire and not having listened to these jurors tell what they thought, what their experiences were, what their biases might have been, all of that, by virtue of not having been there, it's difficult to judge, to a large extent, I should say, just how important any of these facts were. Because generally speaking, if somebody is judgmental, you can pick that up in voir dire. If someone has kind of a live and let live attitude, you can kind of pick that up in voir dire. I don't know how well Shannon Smith conducted the voir dire in this case. I have no idea. But I certainly think that the foreperson, are you the foreperson? Yes. You know, it was like, wow, this gal really wants to get this verdict delivered. And I suspect they want to all get the heck out of there. You know, this has taken up a huge chunk of their life, and it's going to be something that every last one of them remembers. And I'm sure that many of them remember the day that this all happened and the news accounts in the media and all that. So I think the things that led to the conviction are multiple. One of them is the fact that they fled. You can argue all you want that flight does not equate to guilty knowledge, but when you send a text to someone saying you are hosed, to use a more polite term, When you send up somebody a text that says we're hosed, generally speaking, that shows some consciousness of guilt. And it's not wise. I mean, I don't understand why people have not learned this lesson. I would think that if something happened that, I sort of walked my way backwards into a crime, the last thing in the world I would do would be to start telling people about it on my cell phone and sending them text messages. I would probably throw my phone into the river. I wouldn't keep it on me. I would absolutely destroy it, because eventually, if they get your phone, they get all kinds of stuff. And of course, that's how they found out about the affair. Now, the affair was important too. In addition to flight, I think the affair was important. And it was important because it showed, as many of you pointed out and I missed, it shows where her priorities were in terms of how she spent her time. And she spent her time doing things that clearly she shouldn't have done. Now, if I'm James Crumbley at this point, do I try to distinguish myself from Jennifer Crumbley? Probably, but will it do any good? He's the guy who bought the gun. So he has to think about pleading at this point and seeing if he can get a better deal, seeing if he can, at least mitigate some of the punishment by coming in and saying, okay, mea culpa, I did a bad thing. I would certainly encourage him to take a plea at this point, because I don't think Jennifer Crumbley had nearly as much culpability as the man did, as the husband did. But that said, again, we get back to the fact that many of those women on the jury may have been mothers. Many of those women may have had sons or daughters. Some of them may have had emotional issues in the past. And I would venture to bet that every last one of those women on that jury didn't go, you're just fooling around. You're just messing with me. Stop playing with the Ouija board. You'll be fine. Now, you can take whatever position you want to on demons. You can believe in them or not believe in them. But I'll tell you this much. If somebody told me that they were demon possessed, or they'd seen demons, even if I didn't believe in them, I would take it seriously, because it might indicate that they are, having some problems mentally. But again, I think a lot of it has to do with the parenting issue in this. A lot of those jurors were likely parents. A lot of the men were likely parents. And certainly they would, if they were smart, and I think they all are, they don't have the experience of being a mom, but they have the experience of being a dad, and they've had the experience of seeing their wives be moms. And they would tend to evaluate Jennifer Crumbley on the basis of that experience. If it was me on that jury, I would be saying, what would Ginger do? And that would be sort of my calculus for how I went about judging certain behaviors. And I think, again, that that's probably a large part of how this jury came to that decision. The instructions played a big role, and I think that to a certain extent, they overlooked the importance of the reasonable doubt instruction. And I said before in the video, there is a chance, I don't know how good a chance it is, because I don't know the Michigan Court of Appeals and I don't know the Michigan Supreme Court. But what I do know is that the Michigan Supreme Court will probably get a chance to weigh in on this. Whether they do or not, I don't know. But they'll get a chance to weigh in on whether or not it was error not to restate the reasonable doubt instruction and not to link that to the comment that the jury made or the question that the jury asked. Because again, they were asking about a lack of evidence, and that's right in that jury instruction. And again, I get that, like I said before, that sort of plays to the home field advantage thing. So that's what I have for you. I wanted to get this out because the jury did just render their verdict. I know you all have followed the trial on this channel. I greatly appreciate you doing that. And again, thanks for your comments. Even people who disagree, you're certainly entitled to disagree. And all of you, even when you've disagreed, have been respectful. So thank you very much for that. Thanks again for watching. And come back and catch me down at the beach again next time. I try very hard not to be like all those other YouTubers who open up every video by asking you to subscribe before you've even seen the content. But now that you've gone a few minutes into the content, if you find this interesting and helpful, please subscribe. I'd consider it a personal favor. If you like this video, here are a few others you might try, and don't forget to subscribe. Have a terrific day, guys.